Ignition sequence starts. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Hey everybody, this is the Digital Asset Investor, and it is finally not raining where I am. And it has rained more the last month than I have ever seen it rain, it seems like. But I'm now that I'm coaching a baseball team, it's I guess it's good in a way that you don't have to practice all the time, but because in Little League, believe it or not, they want these kids to practice when they're 6 to 8 years old every single day leading up to the season starting, which seems a little tough, but I'm fine with that. But the rain has kept us from doing it. So we've been able to get in cages. I've got some 6 to 8 year olds that can now hit because my arm's hurting. I've thrown to them so much, but I can't, but they can't field for anything right now because they haven't been able to get on a field. so it'll be, but it's not just my team. It's the other teams as well. Okay, moving along. As you know, yesterday the stock market closed down over 1,000 points. You don't see that every day. Well, it closed down over 1,000 points, and so I wanted to, and a lot of it had to do with the C word, the one I can't say on this channel because YouTube will give me a strike. And so, but I sent this out on Twitter. The U.S. has spent, no pun intended, decades creating this financial disaster. Don't blame it on you-know-what now. Maybe a trigger, but not the cause. This is what's going to cause our financial system to collapse. And it's not just the United States, it's all of the governments of the world. This is the position that they have put you and I in, and they've been building this mess for decades. And so don't blame it on something else. And maybe that's their plan, is to be able to point to something else so that they don't get the blame. As you remember, nobody went to jail from the financial crisis. Okay, here's our markets today. It's all kind of flat, a little bit down. XRP is at almost 27 cents. Not really a lot happening right now, but that's good in a way. While the stock market's going down 1,000 points, these markets are somewhat stable. And so I would think that who knows, they may start to surge because of all this. I've always kind of believed that that's where this would eventually go. Cryptopolis sent this out. Today is the MoneyGram conference call for their earnings call. 16 cents per share Q4 2019 versus 3 Q3 2019. And this is because, remember, Ripple bought part of MoneyGram and they're using on-demand liquidity. 39% increase in transaction growth year over year, which I'm curious to hear if they attribute to ODL XRP settlements. See, folks, there's two things about this. One is what must MoneyGram's competitors be thinking, and the other is what does Wall Street do when they begin to realize that a partnership with Ripple means an increase in a company's stock value over time? What happens when that pairing happens? All right, and this is from XRP Crypto Wolf. He summarized it as well. MoneyGram International reports fourth quarter and full year 2019 financial results. The report on MoneyGram's financial results for fourth quarter and full year 2019 revealed the receipt for a total of $11.3 million in the fourth quarter from Ripple. Now, this is a couple of screenshots where they're mentioning Ripple in here. Additionally, MoneyGram continued to expand its strategic partnerships with Ripple as the first money transfer company to scale the use of blockchain capabilities. Revenue was $323.7 million, a decline of 6% from the fourth quarter 2018. Revenue excludes $8.9 million of benefit from Ripple, which will be accounted for as a contra expense rather than revenue based on a recent consultation with the Securities and Exchange Commission. So you got the SEC meeting with MoneyGram to specifically talk about Ripple and whatever this $8.9 million of benefit from Ripple that they received? That's a question mark for me. But you got the SEC meeting with them on this. But yet the SEC won't say Ripple, they won't say XRP, and if they're specifically asked about whether XRP is a security, they won't say anything. And meanwhile, you've got Stuart Alderati, who's connected to all sorts of people. You know, Stuart Alderati, who I talked about yesterday, who is Ripple's general counsel, who's also connected to the Treasury Secretary of the United States. He knows all kinds of people in the SEC, but they can't talk about XRP or Ripple, just like R3 can't talk about Ripple. Nobody can talk about Ripple. And then you got this from AdX Lighting the Way, sent me this. This is cool right here, folks. Very cool. Caitlin Long is creating the first digital bank in the United States, folks. Now, yesterday, I watched Warren Buffett on CNBC. Anytime the stock market starts to plunge, they cart out the old man so that he can tell you that he's not worried and that everything will be all right. And what he also said, is, as a side note, is that he didn't say it, but they basically said it. He's more heavily invested in Bank of America than Wells Fargo now. But the other thing that he was saying is he was putting down cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin and all that, and they were asking him about his meeting with Tron, but he's not interested in cryptocurrencies and all of this. Well, one thing that I know from watching these people with the big money is that they make you look one way and then they go another way. That's traditionally how they've made their money. And never forget that Warren Buffett, during the financial crisis, this is where I lost my total respect for Warren Buffett. Never forget, he bailed out Goldman Sachs at the federal government's direction. I can't remember if it came from the Treasury Secretary at the time. I think it came from Hank Paulson. Literally had phone calls. You can go watch this in the documentaries and or movies that they created after the financial crisis. He was on the phone with the federal government who asked him to bail out Goldman Sachs. He received preferred stock with the assurance from the federal government. Now, this is not called insider trading of any kind, folks, but they send Martha Stewart to jail. But Warren Buffett made that investment with guarantees from the federal government during the bailout, and they call that completely legal in a supposedly capitalist society to be able to get on the phone behind the scenes with the federal government and have them assure you that your investment is solid and sound and it's okay and they got your back. That is not capitalism, folks. That is not a free market. That right there is called something different. And that was when I completely lost my respect for Warren Buffett. I've got to pause this and I'll start back because my earphones, I think, just went. Yes, I think I lost my earphones there for a second. Okay, so anyway, back to Caitlin Long's bank. It says, introducing Avanti Bank, a new U.S. bank to serve digital asset industry, offering new products and services not currently available in USD markets, along with tech partner Blockstream, Wyoming-based. We're preparing a long process of charter application and aim to open early 2021. A critical piece of U.S. market infrastructure is missing, a regulated bank that can act as a bridge to the Fed for payments and custody, crypto for big institutional money, pensions, endowments, foundations, corporations, sovereign wealth, who need this before entering crypto in a big way. Regulation and blocked it. Okay. But anyway, the point is, as Warren Buffett just told you, he's never going to invest in cryptocurrencies, but guess what he is going to invest in heavily? Banks like this that are about to destroy all those bank investments he's got if they don't get on board with this. That's just the fact. Watch. Mark my words, Warren Buffett will be investing in digital banks. He may not invest in the digital assets, but he will be investing in digital banks because those are the banks of the future. And you'll see a lot of the banks he is involved with that convert to partial digital banks or full digital banks. You watch. Okay, now I have been talking a lot about different people within Ripple recently who and their different connections and where they come from and why I think that the caliber of people and the connectedness of these people is so important for Ripple and for an XRP investment. And I haven't really talked about Marcus Treacher. When I was at Swell, I saw Marcus Treacher. There were two guys at Swell who seemed to be, my perception was that they seemed to be very important. They would walk out and they would have handlers around them. And they seemed like pretty intimidating people to approach and talk to. So I didn't get to talk to Marcus Treacher, didn't get to talk to Stuart Alderati. They were two of them that I got that impression about. I'm not saying they're not nice guys. I'm just saying they kind of had it was a vibe like these guys were the most important guys, even more so than Brad. Now, Brad Garlinghouse had handlers too, but he was very approachable even with those handlers. Now, Marcus Treacher, I want to show you a little bit about his background. He's from the UK. Now he's SVP Customer Success. More or less, he seems to be the guy who is in charge of cultivating and managing the network, the relationships. But look at this. This is something I'm going to go to here in a second because I had never heard of this. Member Board of Directors, RippleNet Management Ltd. Well, what's that? I'm going to show you what that is. Give me a second. But first, I wanted to show you. He was a member on the Board of Directors of Swift from March 2010 to April 2016. So he's at Swift on the Board of Directors for 6 years, right? He's with HSBC for 11 years and 7 months. Head of Innovation, Global Payments, Cash Management, Global Trade and Supply Chain, Global Head of E-Commerce and Digital Channels, Transaction Banking. So he's with HSBC for a very long time. So remember, he gets, let me make sure I do this without showing anything here. There we go. So he is with Ripple, okay, since April 2016. Now, in January 19th of 2017, after he gets hired, all of a sudden, HSBC taps former Ripple CEO for Tech Advisory Board. HSBC is adding Chris Larson to the former CEO of distributed ledger firm Ripple to its newly minted Technology Advisory Board. According to HSBC, Larson and other advisory board members will offer advice and guidance on a range of issues, including potential applications of blockchain tech. Andy McGuire, HSBC's Group Chief Operating Officer, said in a statement, "We have made significant progress in the last couple of years, including more recently becoming the biggest financial services user of biometrics globally. HSBC has played a role in several blockchain proofs of concept in recent months, developments that have occurred since it joined the R3 blockchain consortium in September of 2015. All right, you see how all this ties together, folks? Okay, so let's move along. I told you that we wanted to look at this member. Marcus Treacher is a member, board of directors, RippleNet Management Ltd. So I looked up RippleNet Management Ltd. And here's a bunch of the documentation. I wanted to see who was involved in RippleNet Management Ltd. And basically, what I conclude on RippleNet Management Ltd. It looks like a company they formed over in the UK. Maybe legally they had to have a company to expand RippleNet into the UK and Europe and beyond. But the officers, I looked these guys up, Denton Secretaries Limited. This is just a group of lawyers. I'm assuming the lawyers that put all this together. But you've got Bradley Garlinghouse, who is a director. You got Marcus John Treacher. And then as a persons with significant control, you've got Christian Larson. He's one of the members with significant control. And if you look at the certificate of incorporation of a private limited company, as you go down through here, you'll see RippleNet Limited. I think and then you got Marcus Treacher here. You got Bradley Garlinghouse. And then as you go down, I think Chris Larson's name may be on here somewhere too. Let's see here. Yeah, Christian Larson. You've got all these guys that are mentioned in here, and I think he's listed as like a guy with significant controls. So anyway, I went and tried to find out more and more about this company, and I didn't really see anything other than it was a company they probably formed for the purposes of expanding the network into Europe. That's all I really got out of it. Marcus Treacher, I wanted to show you, I went back and looked at some of his tweets. XRP fine-tuned for the 21st century and the Internet of Value. When it comes to payments at scale, there's no comparison. The XRP, the standard, and it's got this, this is showing this chart we showed a lot of times on here. And I found 3 videos that I thought were interesting. Now, the video you're about to watch, remember when they talked about the flywheel at Swell? That was the first time at Swell that I had heard the term flywheel. Well, I didn't realize it, but Marcus Treacher used the term flywheel back on January 8th of 2019 when he's doing one of the Ripple drops with, I'm drawing a blank on this guy's name, but it'll tell you in a second, I think. But anyway, listen to this.
What are some key milestones that have happened over the course of the year?
2018 was the year where RippleNet really came to life. So we built the network up to connect to 40 countries around the world. We went live with some of the largest banks and most creative payment companies, and we really started to bring the whole payment vision of Ripple to life, and that's a really, really big deal. We also defined the RippleNet community, which is a book of rules that our banks and payment companies work to when they're using Ripple. They can work together, discover new partners and new counterparties, and the network then starts to really build on its own. When you do that kind of thing, that's where you get tipping point, and that's where the flywheel starts to really turn. And we're seeing a great shift in how our customers are behaving in 2018 that tells me that flywheel's really started to kick in.
So Ripple doesn't directly serve a remitter or a small to medium enterprise, but our customers do. So what kind of things have they been able to do with RippleNet for those end users?
We work with their customers to make sure that they are really embedding the value out of Ripple when they're creating their app. So a good example is OnePayFX, which Santander developed with Ripple. And OnePayFX is being rolled out by Santander really worldwide, and Ripple is driving that solution. It's also helping Santander's retail customers get a really excellent payment experience when they are paying friends and family around the world.
Are other customers following Santander's lead in creating these applications and services for their direct customers?
What we are now doing with our customers worldwide is using that know-how and that learning to help them very quickly develop winning propositions for their own apps and their own internet banking services for their own customers. So for example, CIMB went live very recently with Ripple embedded in their SpeedSend product. Transfigure in the UK has implemented Ripple within their payment app. And what that's doing, it's creating a true global network of blockchain-powered payment capability. And that's starting to bring the Internet of Value to life.
What are some key milestones?
Okay, so that's the first one. I've got 3 videos. The third one I like the most, but I like all of these will give you some insight. Now remember, this guy's we're not talking about some jackleg. We're talking about a guy that was with HSBC for years and was on the Swift board. Okay, this guy knows how this landscape operates. So the final video is here, and that's my favorite from Stephen Bull from the D-Up. But I want to show you this one too, because this guy really understands things, and he can give you a real, especially those of you that are new to this, it can really let you see a window into Ripple and XRP and what is really about to happen.
I think we head to 2030, the payment system, I think, will be much more ubiquitous and much more embedded in people's lives and the operations of organizations and robots around the world. So making a payment, receiving a payment, investing, borrowing will feel very much part of the day-to-day activity of either living or working. When a payment happens between, let's say, a buyer, a seller, or 2 people collaborating together, working together, that transaction will happen almost invisibly to the people involved. Today there are many competing technologies. Any of them arguably are profound, whether it's artificial intelligence, whether it's blockchain, the rise of cloud computing, mobile, etc. All of these changes are in play together. And that creates many potential outcomes which need to be thought through and prepared for in the commercial world and also the lives that we lead. Blockchain is interesting because that whole collection of technology is redefining the fabric and the plumbing of the financial world and the commercial world. Technology is first used in an industry to automate what's there already, and it's only when the industry gets comfortable with the technology or the technology embeds properly that the industry starts to look at ways of transforming itself. Whenever innovation first occurs, it always seems a long way away from the mainstream, but it moves very, very quickly into that mainstream. So to give you an example, the Wright brothers got their very basic wooden plane off the field in 1904 in the mid-USA. 11 years later, the first commercial airline went into production. So you move very, very quickly from experimenting and learning to getting real viable propositions. And in today's world, that time span is much shorter. There is always a risk that existing participants in the industry can become white.
Okay, now that last point he made, I think, is so important. There was someone that I was talking to recently, and they were saying something to the effect of, I've never seen an asset that didn't react the way that it should to positive news and positive things the way that XRP has. And I was telling this person, in my opinion, you're not going to see any real price discovery until you do. And it kind of goes hand in hand with what he was saying there about the Wright brothers. The Wright brothers, they get their plane off the ground, and then you just 11 years later, you've got the first commercial airliner in production. Well, same concept, but he said now, and technologically things go much faster. You and I, as XRP holders, many of you that have been here the last 2 years, I've been here since 2013. It seems, and this is what he is referring to in the video before. You want to think about this flywheel thing? Think about it this way. What the flywheel means, folks, is once this thing gets spinning, you're sitting in there and you're like, well, the price just doesn't go up. This just does. It just seems like this is all so slow. I think the reason that they use this flywheel example is that once that rotation gets in motion, it takes on a life of its own, and before you know it, you look up. And as I told the person in my conversation, actually the other day or today, I believe that the price discovery in XRP is not happening until it happens. I believe that when this happens, it's going to be one of those what just happened moments. That's what I think. That's when I think of the flywheel, that's what I think of, is that it's so slow moving at first as it gets going, and then all of a sudden it's flying. And I think we've seen that a little bit of that over the last couple of months as we've seen volumes increase. And in conjunction with that, don't forget, we saw that price in XRP go from, what was it, 18 cents on up to as high as, I believe it was 33, 35 cents or so, and it came back down. But you can't miss that. All right, final video. And in this video, this is from Stephen Bull from the DF. I want you to watch this. And while you're watching this, I want you to remember what Miguel Valles said. He said the goal for XRP is to have as much liquidity as a fiat currency, and used examples like the Swiss franc. Chris Larson has said the same thing. Now listen to Marcus Treacher, who was on the board of directors of SWIFT. When you hear all these clowns tell you that banks will never use XRP or payment companies will never use XRP, this guy worked for HSBC for years and years and years, and was on the board of directors of SWIFT. He knows a lot better than any of those clowns that you see on Twitter know anything. Listen to this.
I think also it's worth pointing out that if you look at how money moves, as an entirety, it really consists of pools of value by currencies: a dollar pool, sterling, Australian dollar, euro, yen, and with blockchain, there's also digital asset pools, individual islands of value. And we think in future those islands will increase in number. There'll be many, many, many of them. So what's required is technology to interconnect them,
Right.
which is what the internet does to data. So the internet is a kind of a web of connectivity that binds together very different databases around the world.
Right.
How the whole thing works. So Ripple is the equivalent of that in the kind of like financial world. And rather than kind of databases, you can imagine clearing networks of value, whether it's a fiat currency like sterling or like euro, or whether it's a digital asset. And because we interconnect very well using our strategy, our method, we really are out on our own.
Right.
We're creating the ultimate web, if you like,
Yep.
or the internet of value.
Yep.
I mean, the writing's on the wall, very clearly to be seen, folks. All you have to do is pay attention. Maybe my 7-year-old needs to draw a picture of a flywheel. Michelle Vandenberg sent me this from XRP Crypto Wolf. Europe's blockchain infrastructure starts to go live. The European blockchain services infrastructure has specific use case like European self-sovereignty identity to give users control over their data and trusted data sharing for cross-border trades and tax. I forgot to pull something up. Let me look at my profile here and go down. There was a tweet that I wanted to show you that I forgot to put in this. This was a tweet from Christine Lagarde yesterday. Or a couple of days ago. I very much enjoyed the cultural program offered by my hosts at the G20. And this is Christine Lagarde with Mark Carney, who was the head of the Bank of England. And this is Christine Lagarde with our Federal Reserve Chairman. And remember, this is the same Federal Reserve Chairman who told us that the federal government has been working on digital assets for 2 decades. 2 decades. That would be before the creation of Bitcoin, folks. All right. And then there's this from Michael at VAL5 Links. Bank of England exec urges focus on digital currencies. I wanted you to see this. It's right here. The Bank of England's chief cashier is urging support to explore the launch of an official digital currency. Sarah John, who oversees the issuance of banknotes at England's central bank, says it's crucial to act on new opportunities with the emerging asset class. Further delays, she warns, will serve big tech players like Facebook, along with the private sector that will be able to shape, control, and dominate the new era of money. And remember what Brad Garlinghouse said when they came out with Facebook's Libra, when they announced it. He said it was the best thing that ever happened to Ripple because their phones started ringing off the hooks. A lot of those central banks and banks that Ripple had been talking to, all of a sudden they said, wait a minute, Ripple tried to tell us, and they started calling. Remember that? Don't forget that. All right. And so then we've got, let me get rid of a couple of things. Now, I want to drive a point home here. This is from Michael at VAL5 Links. XRP and Ethereum poised to dominate. This is an article about when Ashish Burla went to the Goldman Sachs Tech Conference a while back. This is a quote from him. I think that Ethereum is really interesting in that over $1 billion in loans, it's DeFi ecosystem, so they really own that narrative. They have products and an ecosystem around that narrative. XRP, the digital asset that provides the Ripple network in any destination where our products are live. XRP is the most liquid digital asset. And so for cross-border payments and remittance products, I think that XRP will perform really well in those use cases, but everyone has to find their niche and use case and build that ecosystem. And the further ahead you get, the harder it is to dislodge. So for example, with cross-border payment, I think it's going to be increasingly hard to dislodge XRP. And with DeFi, as the ecosystem expands, it will be increasingly hard to dislodge Ethereum because it's so liquid for those use cases. Now, so he's talking up Ethereum. This is against the backdrop of Spring going to the Ethereum Denver conference where Vitalik Buterin's working on Ethereum 2.0. Ripple sees something, and so therefore the digital asset has picked up, and I see something. Ripple believes Ethereum's here to stay, and so I believe Ethereum's here to stay. It's a feather to put in your cap. And then against that same backdrop, Ripple is promoting this speech by David Schwartz that he did at Stanford Blockchain, where he starts off the speech, and I showed it to you, by telling the Bitcoin maxis that they might be angry because he's about to lay it out for them. Okay, so what I see, I'm getting increasingly nervous about Bitcoin. I'm getting more bullish on Ethereum. I will always be bullish on XRP because it is it's the greatest digital asset ever created. But Ethereum, Ripple sees as something that's here to stay. And remember, JP Morgan associated themselves with the Ethereum blockchain. Don't forget that. I'm the digital asset investor. I'm not an investment advisor. This is for entertainment purposes only. Please subscribe, hit the like button. Tell your friends and family that XRP is the one, but there may be another Ethereum. Thank you for listening.